Is my hair better outside the mic?
It has no in, more like a headband ish. Yeah, yeah. And make sure we're live, Chad.
Hi.
Chad. Okay. Now, should I just wait? Should I just look in the camera? We don't read. We don't. Okay. We don't rehearse. Yeah. All right. So everybody, do I just look into the camera, Chad? Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my studio here in New York City. I'm at the beautiful Hangar Studios where I pre-record my podcast every week. This week I'm with Dr. Millie Lytle. She's one of my favorite guests. She's a naturopathic physician and she's based here. Chad, do you have good volume on me? That's cool. Okay. So she's a naturopathic physician and she's based in New York City. And we like to talk about the things that she's most passionate about. And this week we're talking about this was your idea, Dr. Millie.
Yeah.
She said she's passionate about hormones because hormones obviously drive the car, our bodies. And she wanted to talk about how stress affects hormones. And that was when a doctor or a guest wants to specifically talk about something, I always say for sure, because I assume it's a passion of yours, right?
Absolutely. And I really find that I see a lot of patients who have a similar health condition, and then I go through another wave and I see a lot of patients who have another health condition. I don't know why it's like that, but it just happens.
Right.
So right now it's stress and hormones.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And Chad can attest to this. I'm a little tightly wound. But I mean, I'm Chad, but to be fair to me, I'm Sicilian and Cuban and Lebanese. So how calm am I going to be? Right. But this is,
you were never given the chance not to be not calm.
right. I mean, no, but seriously, my mother's Sicilian, my father's Cuban and Lebanese, so I wasn't going to be calm naturally. But what's fascinating about this topic, and the reason I wanted to do this topic for you guys, is because I thought this is something that I relate to so well. And usually, if I relate to something, it's of interest to my followers. So this is what we're about to do. We're about to do a pre-record, and I wanted you to be in on it. So Chad, before we start, can I say hi to my little niece, my baby niece?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay.
Of course.
So I wanted to say this is to my beautiful niece, Eliana. Hi, Eliana. How are you, sweetie? I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Today is your birthday, and she's a big girl. Now, she's a big girl, Chad. She's not a baby anymore. She's 4 years old. You're 4 years old today, right, Eliana? She's 4 years old. And I want you to know that I love you very much, and I want you to have a very happy birthday, and you're my favorite big girl in the whole wide world ever. Can you imagine, Dr. Millie? Like, she's that special.
She's very special. Happy birthday, Eliana.
Happy birthday, Chad. Say happy birthday to Eliana.
Happy birthday, Eliana.
Happy birthday,
That's
Eliana.
a beautiful name.
Eliana. Her name's Eliana Rose. Eliana Rose Segundo. So, Eliana, listen, I'm going to be coming to Florida soon, and I'm going to take you and Carissa, that's her baby sister. We're going to go to a toy store, and we're going to go shopping, and you can buy anything you want, and that'll be your birthday present. Okay, that's why I'm TT Tara. That's why I'm the favorite TT. All right, I love you, Angel. God bless you. All right. All right. So Chad, you want to get started?
Yeah, let's do the show. I'm going to start the clock, and from here on out, we are in doublecast with the podcast and Facebook Live. All right.
But the sound checks are all cool.
Everything's great.
Okay.
And I've already listened to our show on Facebook. We sound good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the first time it was a little screechy.
It takes a second to dial itself in.
Got it.
But we're
good. Okay. Okay. Wait. Let me clear my throat. Okay.
That's sexy.
Chad.
One more time, right in my ear.
Chad.
Yeah.
All right. Chad's.
I think I made her blush. You see that?
Chad's Mr. Know-It-All.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We're rolling. Yes.
We're ready. Just say 3, 2.
3, 2.
Well, hello and welcome to Tara Marie Live. I appreciate you tuning in. And again, I welcome you to my show. I'm your host, Tara Marie Segundo. I'm a fitness expert, a personal trainer, and a motivational strategist. And I'm coming to you from the beautiful Hangar Studios right here in New York City. Tara Marie Live is about mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual health, and how these parts of you must all be nurtured so you can enjoy optimal health, optimal happiness. And this is by striking a balance in all these areas of your life. Now, my guests are experts in all of these areas. And my goal with this show is to bring you information that will help you make shifts and improvements in your life so that you can have a better experience of life. Now, today's topic is one that I love because I can't think of a single person who won't relate to it. And I know that I certainly can. We're talking about stress and what it does to your body, most specifically, what stress does to your hormones. Now, we all deal with stress, admittedly, some of us better than others. And those of us who don't deal well with stress know that it can take a toll on your day-to-day life. But what you really have to consider more so are the long-term effects on your health. And that's both really mentally and physically. Admittedly, I do not deal well with stress. I never have. And it's something that I'm always working on because I've suffered with health issues myself that were directly related to not dealing well with stress. And I know that for a fact. And so, in a sense, I brought the health issues on myself. So I've had to learn to rethink how I deal with stress because I want to be happy and I want to be healthy. Now, what I've learned is this is what I've learned in my life. I think you'll agree. I'm about to introduce our lovely guest, Dr. Millie Lytle. Let me get to that. Is that it's really not what happens in your life that creates stress, but rather how you react to it. That's what creates stress or not. Because I've noticed that the same thing could happen to two different people. And one person could get really stressed out about it and have like a full-blown anxiety attack, while the other person just allows it to roll off her back. So what's the difference if the same thing happened? Since I seem to always be the person getting stressed out, and I admire people who are really chill, I wanted to do this show for those of you who, like me, could benefit from understanding what we're doing to our bodies with the hope that it'll be motivation enough to learn to just kind of let things go and let things roll off your back. So with this, I bring you help. Help and hope is here. This is Dr. Millie Lytle. She's a personal friend of mine. She's also a naturopathic doctor, a certified nutrition specialist, a published researcher. She's a smarty pants and an author, and she's known for solving health puzzles using naturopathic medicine and custom-made nutrition programs. Right here in New York City, she's a member of Tornazol Wellness's primary care team, and she's the founder of Eating for Meaning. That's a nutrition program that will help you transform your relationship to food. So many of us need that. She's also co-founder of Nat Med Coach, which offers membership and expert health programs by naturopathic doctors and health coaches on topics affecting your well-being and ultimately your life. So welcome, Dr. Millie Lytle.
Thank you, Tara Marie. How are you?
I'm good. Dr. Millie, I love working. I've worked a lot with Dr. Millie. Dr. Millie, they all know that for years I was on SiriusXM, and now I'm doing the show as a podcast. And when I was on SiriusXM, you were one of like my go-to guests because what's cool about your practice, you're a naturopathic physician, and the only naturopathic physician that we've had on so far, Chad, I think it was Dr. Patricia Patricia Selassie, Dr. Patricia Pimentel Selassie, who's actually your partner, co-founder with Nat Med Coach. Mm-hmm. But what I love about naturopathic physicians is that when a patient comes to you experiencing any kind of disease or condition, you don't look at the organ in question. So like if a patient comes to you with a thyroid dysfunction or adrenal dysfunction or kidney issues or anything of that nature, you don't look at that organ, but rather you start by looking at the whole person because all the organs work in concert with each other. So as a naturopathic physician, correct me if I'm wrong, your thought is, if I don't look at all the other organs beside the thyroid or beside the adrenals, beside the liver, I'm missing 90% of the picture because just that organ may not be what is diseased, what is having a struggle, what is having a problem, because everything works in concert. So if one violin is out of tune, the whole symphony sounds bad, right?
Yep, exactly. By the time you get symptoms, then there's been a disease process that's going on for a long time, and it might be an entirely different organ or organ system than it is now. And that's because all the organs are related to each other.
Right.
And because we're one being and our mind, body, emotions, and spirit are all connected as well.
Right. And for that reason, Dr. Millie, when I was on SiriusXM, you were on a lot of times. Like we did a lot of different shows because she has a way of taking different topics and introducing them to an audience in a very holistic way that I think makes people think and makes people feel like they can actually be empowered to change their health. The show that we're doing today is not about giving people information about hormones. It's more about making people think, wow, maybe I could change the way I live my life, change the way I think, change the way I behave in such a way that I could actually positively affect my health.
Yeah,
right?
I love giving education and information about what's going on in a person's physiology because it's a mystery to us all what's going on in our
Right.
bodies, and I think people really appreciate knowing that.
Right.
But I like to, break it down so that it's simple and easy to comprehend and it's practical and we can just put solutions into play
Right.
as soon as you hear them.
And we have more power than we think.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing, I've said this before, the old medical model, if you would agree with this, the old medical model is I get sick, I do what I want, I get sick, I go to doctor gives me pill, fixes me.
Mm-hmm.
The new medical model, and the one to which you prescribe, is I'm the doctor, I'm just a facilitator. You, the patient, you're the person who lives in your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You, the patient, have far more power than I do, the doctor.
Absolutely. Primary care is self-care. I think that's the new model.
Right.
So the way we're taking care of ourselves, that's on an everyday basis, what we're doing 7 days a week.
Right.
Or 6 days a week if you have a cheat day,
Yeah.
That's really what's going to impact your health in the long run.
In the long run, exactly. So today's topic, how stress affects hormones. I didn't even put that topic on the thing. It's how stress affects hormones. And I want to start, not like this is terribly necessary, but in your definition as a doctor would define, how do you define stress? I know to me, may I define stress as okay. So the way I think of stress is like something that happened today, and Chad's aware of this because I texted him. Left the house. I wanted to get here a bit early because I knew we were going to do the Facebook Live and I wanted to have everything in place a little bit early. And so I left my house a little bit early. And when I got to the point where I was going to jump on the subway, there was, Chad, what do you call it? A street fire? I don't know.
Well, now I just got a report. It was a subway fire.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So there was a fire, but
Underground.
New York City.
okay. But what it looked like,
What it looked like was...
Okay, what it looked like is there was a hole in the street and there was black smoke billowing out from it, and there were emergency vehicles and police cars and fire trucks all everywhere, and there was yellow police tape everywhere. So I didn't know even if I could take the subway or how I could even get to the subway to see if I could take it. Okay, not a great thing when you're in a time crunch. So I started to like sweat. I started to think, what am I going to do? But then I thought to myself, I thought rather than get stressed out, I took a photo of it and I texted Chad because he's a New Yorker too. I thought I can't be held responsible. I'm doing the best I can. Mm-hmm. So the stress came when what I thought what my expectation was interrupted and derailed completely.
Yep.
That created stress because my expectation was busted. It was really my expectation. If I had expected a fire to be billowing up from the street, I wouldn't have gotten stressed out about it. But my expectation was that my life would be like it is every day. When I walk to the subway, it would take approximately 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah. Your expectation where you were going to arrive here at a certain time.
Yeah.
And now you're realizing that that was not going to be the case.
Correct.
And if you stay fixed to that idea, then it creates stress or distress, which is simply put, the feeling of pressure. It's a feeling of pressure being put
That's why I
upon
started
you.
sweating because my heart rate elevated, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's a whole hormonal cascade that happens when we get put under stress, when we get put under pressure, and that's what we're going to be discussing throughout the show. But basically, it's a process that disrupts our homeostasis, which is our body's equilibrium.
Right.
And that can be so many things. And so that's everything from the feeling of being late or the feeling of
Not getting a deadline met. Yeah.
exactly somebody yelling at you, seeing something that's frightening, being in physical danger, not having eaten lunch. It's a variety. Being exposed to bright light, being exposed to loud noise, not having slept last night.
Yeah.
So many different stressors that we perceive, and the feeling of stress is actually created by what we do call stressors. And stressors, those are open to perception because those, even though some stressors will put pressure on a certain organ of our body or put pressure on our adrenal glands, which are the producers of our stress hormones. If we perceive the stress and we have emotional stress along with that or psychological stress along with that, then it will be worse.
Right. So if I can reframe what you just said, in that moment when I saw the billowing smoke and my heart started racing, I thought, great, this is the perfect day for this. And I started to get stressed out. The choice I made to say, there's nothing I can do about it. There's literally nothing I can do about it. I'm going to take a photo of it, and I figured a photo. I didn't have time to send a long text to Chad, so I figured a picture was worth 1,000 words, right, Chad? I mean,
Yeah, no, it looked like the street was smoking some really thick black tar.
Correct. So I thought to myself, I'll do the best I can. But see, normally, I'm the type of person, and I have to admit this because I can't act like I'm sitting in an ivory tower. I'm the kind of person who normally my knee-jerk reaction would be more to get very upset about it. And like you just said, to take a situation that's not good, but make it worse with my perception of it and how I'm choosing to think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it's a disparity in what our expectation of the situation is versus what the reality is. And so if you stay attached to what your expectation is as opposed to changing your expectation, then you get more stressed.
Okay.
But you did the right thing. You changed your expectation.
Right.
You said, okay, I'm going to be late. I accept that.
Is what it is.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
It rains on the wedding. The food is spoiled. You know, I mean, all sorts of things go wrong in life.
Yeah.
And if we stay attached to that idea that, oh, things should have been perfect, and then we create stress, internal strife for ourselves. And that stress, it puts pressure on our endocrine system.
Right. So what's interesting about this show is it's part... I mean, my show is about mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual health. This really taps into the mental and emotional as well as the physical ramifications of the mental and emotional.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of goes back to naturopathic medicine. So again, stressors are different for different people.
Yeah.
And whether or not something is a stressor is based on what you tell yourself about the stressor. And like I said in the open, I've seen instances where literally the same thing could happen. The identical thing could happen to two people. Maybe let's just pick an extreme thing. A house burns down in a California house fire. I had friends who, lived near this, and I was worried about them. But let's say your house burns down. So then there are two people living in the house. One person, it could be literally the end of the world. It could create great anxiety, depression, et cetera, et cetera. For another person, they could think, well, it sucks, but at least I got out alive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same incident. One person falls into a deep depression because of possessions that were lost and what the ramifications on his or her life. The other person is like, I'm just glad I'm alive. I mean, it sucks, but what am I going to do?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So if we can and this is where mindfulness comes in, or our own self-awareness and our mental flexibility to change along with our life as our life changes, because nothing is guaranteed. Everything's always changing. The more we can, quote unquote, go with the flow. Yes. It really does work to reduce stress because we're not staying attached to how we wanted things to be. Right. So this is definitely the first lesson, is to do things that help you go with the flow, to help you relax about your expectations about your life. And on a daily basis, there's all sorts of statements about this. Don't sweat the small stuff, right?
Yeah. Easier said. Easier said than done. When you leave your house and there's smoke billowing up. I mean, like I said,
some things are not psychological or emotional. Some things are real danger. So being involved in a fire is really a danger. It's not just a perception of danger. What it does to the actual body, though, is similar. And how long it lasts is what determines whether or not it's a big problem or not.
Got it. Because right now you're talking about acute stress versus chronic stress. Yeah. Okay. So acute stress would be you're almost hit by a car and you have that adrenaline rush of, that kind of thing, versus chronic stress would be caring for a dying parent. Yes. For 2 years. Yes. And those are the two, Or
almost getting hit by a car and having post-traumatic stress disorder and thinking about it every day, or every time you walk into the street, you get triggered. You know, so there can be triggers also that where we're not actually in real danger anymore, we still perceive ourselves to be in danger.
Right. But nevertheless, whatever the body's perceiving, whatever's going on in the mind, there's an instantaneous chemical reaction in the body for every thought and emotion. Right. Right. Yeah. So is stress always a bad thing as regards our health?
No, because, stress is needed. Stress is what essentially wakes us up in the morning. It's what gets us going. It's what keeps us motivated. It allows us to do exercise or more physically strenuous things. It actually even helps our immune system in the short term. It helps our body heal. So there's physiological and chemical stress that actually helps us be healthy and overcome situations. It allows us to run away from danger if we're, if a
Got it. Yes,
tiger's
yes,
in the
yes.
room or if a
Yeah.
dog wants to bite us, we run, right? That's a stress reaction that we're
Stress
protecting ourselves.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, but again, those are acute situations.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of stress that's not a bad thing for your health it's the acute situations.
Acute and the normal routine stressors that happen on a daily basis, like so our normal physiology, like it's every day we wake up in the morning, we need a certain amount of the hormone is cortisol.
Yeah.
We need enough cortisol to increase so that it rises us from sleep. Otherwise, we would want to stay in bed all day if our cortisol didn't rise.
Mm-hmm.
So a healthy stress response is that our cortisol rises. We wake up bright and cheery. Here we are, ready for the day.
Got it. We just don't think of that as stress.
We don't think of that as stress because it's not distress. It's not something that we associate with negative.
Okay.
And so it's really eustress.
Yeah, and you call that good stress. Eustress. EU stress.
Yes,
Okay.
EUSTRESS. And that's a normal stress. It's a kind of stress that we perceive as normal. So it could be routine, and we could adapt also to consider things that might be stressful, actually physiological stressful as non-stressful, depending on our temperament.
Say that again.
So, for instance, somebody who lives in the city like New York might perceive.
Where do you live in Brooklyn?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
So here we are, right? And so people in New York might perceive that 24-hour lights, 24-hour noise, the smell of urine on the streets, like all these things.
Yeah,
we might perceive these things as normal.
It's just life.
Right,
Yeah.
it's life. Whereas somebody who's living in the country or in a smaller city or a smaller town would be horrified to come to New York and be like, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. There's so much noise. I can't sleep. I can't think. Da-da-da.
And I'll tell you this. I moved to New York 24 years ago. I moved here on August 23rd of 1993. So this August will be 24 years I've been here. When I first got here, I had been working and living in San Diego, which is kind of paradise, right? You live in flip-flops and cut-off shorts and tank tops. And I was a fitness instructor, and I came here to go to grad school. And it's not that I had not been to New York City. I'd come here to, for different reasons. But to live here, I mean, the constant, the sirens, the police sirens, the sounds of the buses, the honking horns, just the congestion of people coming at me. Do you know what I mean? Like there are so many people per square foot here. My nervous system, at first it was like an affront to my nervous system, but something interesting happens when you're exposed to it every day. I learned to tune out and shut off. So it doesn't, like now, throngs of people are coming at me. I don't even notice it because I've shut down a little. I don't know if that's good or bad. I've learned to turn off my response mechanism to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even hear the sirens or the ambulances or the fire engine. I don't even hear it anymore.
Exactly. So we can do some adapting, especially psychologically and emotionally. You're prepared for it. You know that this
and your
is
nervous
normal.
system can adapt, right?
Yeah, it does do some adapting. Now, are people in New York more stressed out than people in other cities? Yes, I think so.
I think so.
Yes, we're moving faster. This is the city of psychoanalysis.
we're
Everybody needs
crazy.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is that. To some extent, we normalize it from an emotional standpoint. We're not afraid. We expect it. It's routine. But on the other end of it, our physiology and our biochemistry is still responding. We still
I think
are
we're kind of revved
more
up here.
stressed. Yes.
Yeah. And I also think that people who are attracted to living here, because after I'd lived here for 3 years, the first 3 years I hated New York. I hated New York City the first 3 years. I thought these people, I'd come from like Southern California. I thought these people are just rude. I mean, they're rude. Nobody makes eye contact on the subways or even in the grocery store. In the grocery store, people are bumping each other. I thought, this is horrible. But after about 3 years, I don't know what happened. I guess I became one of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't, that's not my perception of now. I think New Yorkers are lovely people. I don't notice anything bad. So either everything changed 21 years ago or I became one of them, which I probably think I more became one of them. And now this is just normal to me. Now, if I go to another city, I get impatient, like when things don't move along at the grocery store, if the cashiers are chit-chatting with the, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
and that's a stress response too.
yeah, got it. So now, okay, so whether the stress is for a positive reason, like let's say a wedding, or a great new job opportunity, or for some other positive circumstance, or for a negative reason, like losing a loved one, losing a job, a health crisis in your own life, is the effect the same on the body? Because I want to say this, like when I was starting up this podcast, that's a good thing. That was that's a lovely thing that my show's starting back up after not being on the air for a while. But it was a lot of stress getting everything organized and getting all my ducks in a row. And it felt like a negative stress, even though it was for a good reason. Do you understand? So even for good reasons, whether getting married, things like that, it still can take a hit on your body, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of about dosage and timing. So how much stress over how long a period of time. So if you're experiencing a small amount of stress, that's actually a process called hormesis. It's a small amount of stress. So it could be, a little jolt, a little bit of bad news or a little bit of good news that sets us into action. It could be a little bit of caffeine. It could be a little bit of hard endurance exercise. That's called hormesis. It's when there's a dose-dependent response. So in a small amount, we respond well. It actually stimulates us to respond well and be better.
Okay.
In a large amount, it gets worse. It starts to break down.
Okay.
So with a wedding, let's take a wedding. You're going to get married. You're happy.
That's great.
Yeah. You're excited. You have a new podcast here. You're excited. You're happy. You have endorphins. You have some oxytocin. You've got serotonin. So you do have a stimulus of happy and healthy neurotransmitters and hormones. You have that.
That was accurate.
Right.
And then reality set in.
And then reality sets in. You're like, oh, I have to do a lot of work.
Right. I think I told somebody, crap, I forgot how much work it takes. Like, because when I wasn't doing a show, all I wanted to do was do a show. So when I found the Hangar Studios and I found Chad and Jen, his business partner and stuff, I was thrilled, and there was this brief period of elation. And then when the time period started that I had to get everything ready to launch, that was a very different feeling. Lack of sleep, anxiety, things like that. So
exactly. You start, running on fumes. You're an adrenaline junkie right then, because you need to go, and you put yourself in that mindset where you need to do that.
Right.
And that's when our cortisol is high. And so then at that point, it is the same as a bad stress.
Got it. So even if it's for a good reason, do we
Although
have?
you might not be as emotionally upset as if somebody died or somebody got divorced, or moving is actually a very stressful event.
Hate it.
It's one of the top 5 most stressful events.
Hate it. Yeah.
I mean, people don't even necessarily perceive it as something emotional. It's just the amount of work.
Yeah,
it depends on why you're moving.
Yeah, I moved 5 years ago and almost had a nervous breakdown. And I was moving into a better condo. Like, I was happy to be moving into this better condo, but I forgot, oh, okay, I have to do the work. Like, I don't have a team of fairies to come do it for me. Do we have to feel stressed to experience the effects in our body? So what about people who are really good at compartmentalizing and kind of suppressing? Because I have a friend of mine, it's obviously a guy. Guys do this all the time. He compartmentalizes things. Like this is just for example, his mother died, and he was very quickly able to just take it and put it over here. And then when he needed to work, do you know what I'm saying? I'm more the type of person where everything's intertwined and I can't push something aside and act like it doesn't exist. So do we have to actually feel it to experience the effects of stress on our bodies, even if we're good at compartmentalizing or suppressing our feelings?
So this is the broad category of coping. Okay. And there's so many different ways that people cope with their stress or don't cope. So categorizing, putting things in boxes, putting it over here and dealing with it later, that's a form of coping. Now, whether or not it's a healthy coping or an unhealthy coping is, do they ever get around to dealing with it?
Okay.
Right? So we don't necessarily, though, have to feel emotionally upset in order to be stressed, in order to have stress processes going on.
Because isn't it true, if you're suppressing something and let's put it honestly, if you're compartmentalizing the death of like a parent, that's suppressing it to some extent, right?
If it goes on. Yeah, it's like if you can compartmentalize it for your day to get your work done and then you're grieving at night, then okay. Or, you're grieving over the summer holiday, then okay. But if you're putting that in a box and leaving it there for years and years, then that's going to eat away.
Yeah, well, this guy kind of put tape on the box and he labeled it and sent it off to storage. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
To me, the body's not stupid. I mean, I think the body's smarter than our brains are most of the time. Our bodies pick up on stuff, and emotions have to go somewhere. You can't literally put them in a box and just shove them off to the side. They're going somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. And with that person who compartmentalizes, they might lash out at other people, or it might show up some other way emotionally. They can't form good relationships, or they might, sit at home and not have the energy to do anything, or be depressed, or anxious, or have panic attacks, or all these other ways. So it can creep out. However, people, so for instance, we talked about the New Yorker, maybe even us. I'm in a similar boat than you. I moved here from Canada 5 years ago, so it's not.
Oh, 5 years ago? Just 5 years
just 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So we get used to a more stressful environment. It doesn't necessarily emotionally affect us, but it's still affecting us physiologically.
Oh yeah, because we're always like revved up. We're always kind of, we're always, this is the New Yorker. We're always like, okay, let's go.
A person who believes that they only need 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night, it's not because they only need 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. It's because they are used to functioning on that, and they've adapted to be able to function on that, even though they might not be emotionally upset. Or the person who skips lunch or goes, 8 to 10 hours without eating might not feel emotionally bad until after the reaction, actually. Maybe they binge and then they feel bad. But while it's happening, they might not feel bad. They might not really be connected to their feelings about the stress at all. Hunger is a big stressor.
Well, I tell my clients this: exercise, working out stresses the body system. Dieting, if you decide to put yourself on a low-calorie diet, stresses the system. Having a cold or a flu stresses the body. Worrying about somebody stresses the body. Not sleeping enough stresses the body. And this is the killer: the body summates stress. So if you're getting married, that's good. But because of it, so you've got the stress of getting married. You're not sleeping well because you're still working full time and trying to get a wedding ready, and you're exercising 5 days a week, and you're putting yourself on a diet to fit into the wedding dress, and your mother's driving you crazy because she's trying to control everything. That summates. The body summates. The body takes everything and totals it. It's not just one thing. The body summates stress. So you have to really look at all areas of your life. How am I eating? How am I sleeping? How am I exercising? Because these things, exercise puts a stress on the body. So if you're not getting restorative sleep to balance that out, your body's going to take a hit. You've got to keep that in mind, that the body summates stress.
Yeah, stress accumulates.
Right.
Does. Yeah.
And so if you look at your life and go, I can't figure out what it is, really look at your whole life. Now, before we discuss how stress affects our hormones, explain to people what a hormone is and really the role that a hormone plays in our body.
So, a hormone is a chemical messenger, and it travels through the bloodstream, and it's meant to deliver a message that impacts our behavior or our physiology.
Okay.
From one organ to another organ. So it's basically just, one organ telling another organ to do something. And because those organs are not connected physically, they're not touching each other, they need to send chemicals through the blood to deliver that message. And those chemicals are hormones. So
in other words, thyroid hormones give your body messages as to what to do, how fast to be metabolically.
Right. Yeah. Your thyroid hormone delivers messages about how much energy to have, how to consume, how to use your carbohydrate calories, how warm or hot your body temperature is, whether or not you're energized or not. All these things that as you mentioned, affects metabolism. And sleep. When should I go to sleep? When am I tired? The thyroid's involved in that. So that thyroid gland is one organ of the endocrine system, and all the organs of the endocrine system communicate together using hormones. The adrenal glands are another organ of the endocrine system, the hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain.
Yes.
So as you can see, our brain is not physically connected to our thyroid, is not physically connected to where our adrenal glands are.
But the hormones talk to each other.
The hormones
talk to each other.
Yeah, so it's a very complicated system of messaging.
And I wanted to say, because you sent me a PowerPoint presentation of did you give that presentation to doctors? Is that who you were talking to? Because it was kind of...
It was a health coach presentation.
Okay, yeah.
And it was technical, yeah.
So... I mean, conditions associated with stress, before we even get on the topic of hormones, down regulation of your immune system. So you get colds and flus more easily. So down regulation of your immune system. Infections, upper respiratory conditions, cough, something
Chest
in the lungs.
infections,
Exactly.
yeah.
Chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, drug and food abuse, and then relapse, anxiety, depression, metabolic disorders like
Yeah.
literally metabolic syndrome or thyroid issues,
Diabetes. Yeah.
type 2 diabetes. Wounds heal slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Children have developmental delays. So children who are raised in highly stressful environments have speech impairments and
Learning disabilities.
developmental delays, decreased learning, cognitive impairment in general, forgetfulness, even fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and somatic syndrome. Somatic syndrome is that where our thoughts are creating symptoms in our body.
Yep.
Yeah, and you even highlight fertility issues, insomnia. I mean, like everybody knows how many times everybody's heard of the lady and the man who the husband and the wife who can't conceive, and she's so stressed out about it, so they put in to adopt a baby. The minute they get the adopted child, she gets pregnant because she kind of like relaxes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's not just, in other words, are all hormones are affected by stress or just specific ones? Because I'm thinking of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid hormones, even serotonin and dopamine, which are, neurotransmitters in the brain. Are all hormones, generally speaking, negatively affected by stress? Or not just the ones we're going to talk about today, in other words?
Yeah, the potential is there for all hormones to be negatively affected by stress. So insulin, growth hormone, melatonin, in addition to the ones that you've mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
more.
I mean, because like it can throw off. If you're stressed out, maybe you don't get your period 1 month. Maybe a woman skips her period.
Yeah, even cancer is associated with stress. I mean, you can die from stress.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the mechanism as to how, I think, but stress can cause everything, including death.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's serious. I think I had a doctor on, not yet on this program. He said, and I bet you agree, that like 85% of all illness is really stress related if you go backwards and figure out the root cause.
Yeah.
85% is stress related.
When I'm doing an interview, a patient intake with my patients, it's always about going into the medical history to see what was going on at that time or what was going on the year before, because it's not always right at the time. Right. Like, you might be taking care of your sick mother for 2 years and then she finally passes and then there's a breast cancer diagnosis. I mean, things like this happen all the time.
Yeah.
And so, or you are working, you're a teacher and you have such a stressful year, your students, the admin, everything ganging up on you. And then finally you have spring break and you get sick.
Yeah. And how many times in college, this happened to me all the time. In college, I would go, just before Christmas break, whatever, you have final exams, you're pulling all-nighters, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're just go, and you're fine. The minute I would get home for spring break, or not spring break, Christmas break, I would come down and be sick as a dog, and I'd be sick the entire time I was home, almost as though my body knew it could get sick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because the stress was over.
Yeah.
And also I've heard before that often if you look at someone with cancer, if you trace back even 5 or maybe even 10 years before, there was likely a chronic stressful event, because cancer doesn't show up on a Tuesday afternoon. Cancer, if you're diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, you've had cancer probably for the last 5 or 10 years. You just weren't diagnosed yet.
Yeah, chronic illness is not just as soon as the diagnosis happens. It's been brewing for 5, 10, 30 years.
Correct.
I mean, really, it could be a lifetime.
Right.
Or if we look at, I really think, God bless them, nurses have the most stressful job. Their time, they work all night. They're attending to emergencies and patients and doctors and everybody. They smoke. They tend to be overweight. They're rather unhealthy as far as demographics go. Nurses tend to be unhealthy.
I know.
Yeah. And they're serving, and so these things, if we look at chronic illness, it really, we can see in certain demographic populations why there's unhealth or why there's chronic disease, because and a lot of it does point to stress. Right.
And you wanted to talk about most specifically, and I thought this was fascinating, stress and the connection between it and our adrenal glands.
Yeah.
And why don't we start, and you said in the presentation, we're going to talk about adrenal glands produce aldosterone, cortisol, androgens, which are male sex hormones, and adrenaline. Tell us what the adrenal glands do.
Yeah.
I think people know this in a vague way, but explain really what the adrenal glands, what purpose they serve in our body.
Okay. So the adrenal glands they sit on top of the kidneys. They're at the back of they're at our back, and they're called suprarenal glands also. They are the producers of stress hormones.
Okay.
And they really maintain a lot of, I used the word homeostasis earlier on in the show. They really maintain the balance of our hormones, our bodily fluids, and they keep other organ systems, like other endocrine systems, working properly.
Okay, so the adrenal glands are critical to even other organ systems.
Yes.
So when the adrenal glands start to go south, everything else starts to systematically shut down in the body.
Right, because the adrenal glands produce a series of hormones, the most popular of which is cortisol.
Yeah.
That's a glucocorticoid. So cortisol is our number one stress hormone.
Okay.
And it works on a diurnal rhythm, meaning that it's high in the morning. Every day when you wake up, it should be high. It drops down around noon. It has another little peak in the afternoon. And then as it becomes nighttime and evening, then it should be going down, at which time melatonin rises. And so cortisol and melatonin are at opposites of each other. So when cortisol's high, melatonin's low. And when melatonin's high, cortisol is low.
Okay.
And this has to be that way because they are opposing hormones. They have an oppositional influence on each other.
Okay.
So if you are stressed out in the middle of the night, you are not sleeping.
Because your cortisol is spiking.
Because your cortisol is high, which means your melatonin is low, and your melatonin is your sleep hormone. And so the relationship between cortisol, the direct relationship between cortisol and a lot of hormones is strong. I mean, it's a direct relationship.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay, I got you. So what you're saying is the reason the adrenal glands are such a primary player in the body is because the main hormone put out is cortisol. And when cortisol is either high or low, it creates a relationship with another hormone. So if cortisol is high or low improperly, meaning out of order, it's going to create a cascade effect. If cortisol is high, melatonin can't be high, therefore you can't sleep.
Right.
If
cortisol is high, growth hormone has to be low, and then your body cannot repair itself.
Cortisol. What's interesting about that, because I compete. I'm a figure competitor. I've told you guys, Chad, I've mentioned this before on the show, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm a figure competitor, and one of the things you try to do when you're competing in, like, let's say a figure event or a bodybuilding event, you usually decide 24 weeks out. And if you don't have sufficient muscle mass on your body, the first phase of preparation is to get some muscle on your body. That's kind of the first 2/3. The second third would be, you start dieting down because you want to get fat off of your body, but retain the muscle. And athletes know you've got to get your sleep and you've got to keep stress at a minimum, because the other thing is, and you said this in the presentation, cortisol is a catabolic hormone.
Right.
People know that athletes often, and this is against the law, I've never done it, they take anabolic steroids.
Right.
Anabolic steroids bulk you up. They make you add muscle at a very rapid pace. Anabolic is the opposite of catabolic. So if you're trying to put on muscle, if you're an athlete trying to put on muscle, and that's the mainstay of your sport, that you have to put on muscle, and you've got cortisol spiking all the time, it's catabolic. It's destroying all the efforts that you've had in the gym.
Right. And when we go into shock, when our body goes into shock because if we are exposed to so much stress, then our muscle tone goes down. That's one of the first effects that happens. And so cortisol, so that's one reason for why the adrenals are so important. And even though we're hearing about it a lot these days, it's something that we don't really hear about from our doctors generally, because disease of the adrenal glands is so far down the line that they don't usually look at the quote unquote normal or abnormal imbalances of the hormones themselves.
Right, because what did we say? If you technically, okay, so you're a naturopathic physician, so people that are naturopathic doctors generally look at the adrenals differently than, let's say, an MD, like my endocrinologist who's an MD. That would be Cushing's.
Cushing's is too much cortisol.
Okay, then it would be.
And too little is Addison's disease.
Okay, so in other words, they're looking for a clinical diagnosis of
Right.
Addison's disease, and as MDs often think, and not all MDs,
No.
there are a lot of MDs.
No, this is just conventional medicine we're talking
Conventional medicine typically doesn't take into account that life and health is on a spectrum. So what you're saying is as a naturopathic physician, you're not waiting for a patient to get all the way to Addison's disease, which is a total shutdown and failure of the adrenals. You're looking at the spectrum.
about. Right.
And that's why you look at what you'd call adrenal insufficiency or adrenal fatigue,
Exactly.
as
yeah.
opposed to Addison's disease.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I do want to get there, but I also do want to just say, briefly the other big roles that the adrenals play because they produce other hormones as well. So for being tiny, tiny little organs, they produce some of the most important hormones in our body. So cortisol is one. Aldosterone is another. And aldosterone is our antidiuretic hormone, which helps us keep our blood pressure balanced. So the adrenal glands are producing the hormone that helps to keep our blood pressure balanced. We often think about, salt intake. And it's like, well, yeah, salt intake plus water intake plus aldosterone, which is keeping you hydrated and keeping your body from spilling out salt so that you're also getting dehydrated. It's what keeps our body in homeostasis as far as blood pressure is concerned, our cardiovascular system, our kidneys, all of these work together, and this hormone is secreted by the adrenal glands.
Okay, so if aldosterone, because you say that without aldosterone, the kidney loses excessive amounts of salt, and consequently, you become severely dehydrated.
Right.
All right, so as the adrenals become more and more tired, aldosterone production diminishes.
Well,
and that
aldosterone production can actually increase initially, which raises our blood pressure.
okay.
Yeah. So if we have too much aldosterone production, then our blood pressure can actually go up because we're conserving too much water and salt.
Okay.
We're holding water.
But does it ever go in the other direction where as the adrenals become more and more insufficient,
Yes.
you don't produce enough aldosterone and therefore you're constantly dehydrated?
Yes. Constantly dehydrated and urinating too much. And so this is a sign that the adrenals are fatigued. Is that we're over urinating? I mean, it can also be a sign of diabetes. So too much urine production can be a couple of different things. But yes, people who can never quench their thirst, people who crave salt, people who crave, who urinate several times a day too much. This is a sign of our adrenals not working properly.
Okay, so constant urination, constant thirst, craving salt, that would indicate that your adrenal glands are not producing enough of the hormone aldosterone.
Yeah.
What would one do about that?
We have to nourish our adrenal glands. We have to manage our stress. We have to feed ourselves.
Okay, so just nourishing the adrenal glands. So if you, in other words, if you balance the adrenal glands, the aldosterone and cortisol production will balance out.
Yeah, because that's another aspect of naturopathic medicine is I do believe that the body can heal itself. The organs can come back, and it might take 2 years to heal the adrenal glands, or even longer. But we can get it back to normal. Now, the other hormone that's you mentioned a couple of other important ones, but the other hormones that are important that the adrenal glands produce is it produces adrenaline.
Okay.
Which is epinephrine. So when we think about the drug, we think epinephrine, but the hormone itself that our body makes is adrenaline, and it's the same hormone. And
so when you say adrenaline, it's interchangeable with
epinephrine's
epinephrine,
right?
Like an EpiPen,
right?
Like an EpiPen.
Yes, and so these are catecholamines. This is a category of hormones called catecholamines, which produce a chemical effect. So and it's a rapid response. So it's as soon as you get stressed, as soon as that tiger's in the room, as soon as you perceive yourself to be in a very stressful situation, then there's immediate responses on the body. Your blood pressure goes up. You hold water. Your pupils dilate. Your heart starts to beat fast. Your blood starts to pump more. Your digestion shuts down. There's no possibility for orgasm. There's these physiological effects. You might start to sweat. Some of that you mentioned as soon as you saw the fire
when I saw
today,
the black hole, yeah.
Right. So what we would attribute to stress, that feeling of stress or panic, that's adrenaline.
Okay, but where it's good is, let's just take a scene out of New York City. You're walking home late one night and you're doing everything right, keeping mind of who's around you, and all of a sudden you notice that the guy behind you's gotten a little close
Mm-hmm.
and seems to be trailing you,
Mm-hmm.
and you notice that there's no one else on the street. And so that's when you want adrenaline to kick in so you can run like you're
Yes,
like,
exactly.
yeah,
What
okay.
happens is your circulation changes so that your blood starts going through your heart, through your muscles. So your muscles get stronger, your heart pumps faster, you can run
Right.
faster, you're stronger. Your
Right.
pupils dilate, you can see more, you have better peripheral vision.
Right.
You're like, like an animal, right? The animal part of yourself kicks in. It's instinctive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, we need it absolutely. We
Right.
need it to go to the gym.
Right, and you've heard of you always hear of like the mother who lifts the car off of her baby. This is really interesting. One time I saw on Ellen Ellen, her talk show. She had on this little boy. He was a 15-year-old. I don't know if Chad, did you hear about this? This was probably in the news too. This was a couple.
I don't know. What was
Okay, so this little kid, he was like 15 years old. He was in the garage, and Ellen had him on. This is not like a story she told. The little boy, 15 years old, was in the garage. His grandfather was working on the car, and so part of the car was up on blocks, or whatever. The car's up on blocks, so the grandfather could slide under. I don't know what happened, but one or two of the blocks got dislodged, and the car fell on the grandfather. And this little 15-year-old boy, he went to the front of the car, and he lifted the car up by the bumper just long enough that the grandfather could roll out, and then the little boy put the car down.
Yeah.
And this is so it's not like the story of the mother who lifted the car out of the, this was like, and Ellen had the guy on. It was a little skinny pencil neck 15-year-old kid that you'd snap him like a twig, but he lifted up a car so his grandfather could roll just long enough that his grandfather could roll out. That's adrenaline.
Yes. Yeah, that's adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we absolutely need it. It saves our life if it kicks in. It can save our life. It can save the life of another person. However, we don't want it on all the time.
Right.
Like we don't want to be feeling like if adrenaline is turned on all the time, our pupils dilate, our circulation is only in our heart and in our muscles, then it means that our circulation is never in our digestive tract.
Right.
So we're never able to digest our food properly. Or, for men, they can get an erection, but they can't have an orgasm.
Okay. Maybe fertility's compromised.
Exactly. Yeah. A similar thing can happen for women. You know? So this would be the perception of stress on the body that we would recognize. That's because of adrenaline.
Right, because the body, another doctor said this once, and it really made sense to me. And I think this is brilliant the way she said it. She said, Tara, the body has a hierarchy, okay? And, a woman getting pregnant is not the same on the list as keeping a heart beating,
right,
or keeping a brain going. So the hierarchy, so like, like if you're a woman who's having trouble getting pregnant and you're under a lot of stress, your body's not so concerned with you getting pregnant. It's concerned with keeping your heart beating in a steady way, keeping your blood circulating, keeping water balance in your body so everything's cool there, and keeping your brain going. So what I hear you saying is, if you keep yourself mentally in a state that everything is an emergency, you're going to constantly have adrenaline pumping through your body, and that's how you wear the heck out of your adrenal glands.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because adrenaline is meant to be when the car falls on your grandfather.
It's meant to be quick response.
Or when the dude's trailing me when I'm walking up Broadway and 72nd Street. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean, we need jolts of adrenaline throughout the day because we need to raise our energy. We need it to, attune our awareness. We need it for working out. We need it, right? But yeah, if it's on all the time, then it blocks other hormones from being produced that we need, and it stops the opposing physiological processes that we also need just as much.
And you mentioned the workout. What about so I don't do a lot of long steady state cardio. I'll go do like 6-10 minutes of high intensity interval training where I'll just go like a mad person. Like I'll just be like a madman for 10 minutes and then I'll just get off and I'm done. And most of that period of time, it feels like my lungs are going to explode in my body. But I psych myself into doing it because I say to myself, it's just for a few minutes. You can do it. Come on, let's go. Like that adrenaline has to be released to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or to lift weights, to squeeze out that one last rep when you feel like your arms are going to collapse and you're going to drop the weight on your chest. That's adrenaline, right?
Right.
But that's not unhealthy because again, it's just momentary.
Yeah, it's not unhealthy. It's not unhealthy. It's needed. And actually, if you take it further, then a release of adrenaline also releases other opiates in our body, so enkephalins and endorphins. So other, the runner's high, right? Like
Well, that's
we
why-
need
yeah.
enough adrenaline
Yeah.
to get to the point where you actually can experience pleasure from your exercise. So there's in many ways. I mean, it's amazing. The body's amazing,
Well,
right? That it can do that.
I was going to say when I do that, like a 10-minute, like just mad dash, like where it's just so hard. If you told me I had to do it for 1 minute more, I would just quit. Like it's the only reason I can do it is because psychologically I know it's a short period of time. When I finish doing it, I'm as high as a kite. I mean, I've never taken drugs or like been high off of drugs, but I imagine like I'm as high as a kite. Like you can't tell me anything that's going to upset me.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
you've got all these love hormones circulating through your body,
Okay.
natural opiates. And I mean, that's one of the benefit. That's a major benefit of exercise.
Okay.
Is that you actually get happy.
And that's from adrenaline. That's from
you need adrenaline in order to create those happy hormones. Yeah.
Okay, now also male sex hormones are produced in the adrenal glands.
Yeah.
And that would be, you list DHEA
DHEA is
and testosterone. Yeah.
Right. So DHEA is actually a precursor hormone. So women and men need DHEA, and it produces hormones are on a cascade. Actually, it's just that they shunt off in different amounts for different people. So we need DHEA produced from the adrenal glands, and then that produces progesterone for women, and it goes towards producing testosterone for men.
All right, so DHEA is a precursor hormone. The levels of DHEA then produce progesterone for women,
Yeah.
which if you have enough progesterone, you don't have terrible PMS symptoms, correct?
I mean,
is that
progesterone is one of the two
You feel
female
good.
sex hormones that allows us to, it allows us to
feel-
feel good,
yeah.
give us good skin. It's the hormone that drops first around perimenopause. So progesterone.
Okay, so it drops before
starts-
estrogen.
Yes. Progesterone starts dropping when a woman usually is in their early 40s, and it drops gradually, lowering fertility and creating dry skin or increased likelihood of holding weight at the belly and
Yeah.
libido issues. And so it drops gradually up until menopause, which is when estrogen all of a sudden drops.
Okay. So progesterone trickles down during perimenopause, and then at menopause time, estrogen takes a nosedive.
Right.
But preceding any of that, you're saying DHEA starts to drop because DHEA is the precursor too.
Right. Well, DHEA drops if your adrenals are being challenged, overly challenged. So if you're becoming adrenally fatigued, then you're no longer able to produce enough DHEA. And because just like the analogy that the doctor said to you that the body prioritizes,
Yeah.
well, because cortisol and aldosterone are actually responsible for saving our life, it doesn't need, right? Because aldosterone,
yes.
maintains our blood pressure, maintains our homeostasis, our water balance. Cortisol maintains the stability and the relationship between all these other hormones. If we
Yes.
go into shock, for instance, or then we die, if our
Okay.
body can't get enough blood pressure. Whereas DHEA, less important.
Right.
So if the adrenal glands start getting tired, then they stop producing DHEA, which is really the first sex hormones that we can measure when the adrenal glands start getting tired, is that DHEA levels start going down. So if DHEA levels start going down, then we're no longer enabled to produce the progesterone
or testosterone. One of the things I notice with my clients, and I'm not a doctor, but I talk to enough of you to pick up information, is when I have a client, male or female, where they start to get a lot of fat accumulation in the midsection, I'll often have them do blood work, and lo and behold, DHEA is low.
Yeah.
I had one guy, I guess at the time he was about 48, younger than I am now because I'm 52. So he was 48, and we just couldn't figure out, what was going on because he wasn't. I knew how he was eating, and he was telling me the truth. And we had his blood work done, and lo and behold, DHEA was quite low.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
DHEA, I mean, it is marketed as a hormone that we can take over the counter to help burn belly fat. But if we can treat our adrenals and help reduce our stress levels so that our adrenal glands are able to produce natural DHEA again, then that's even better, because then we're also addressing the cortisol issue, the aldosterone issue if there is one, and the adrenaline issue.
Okay. So if a male is deficient in DHEA, he's going to have deficient testosterone, likely.
Yes.
And
So there's a correlation between DHEA. The bulk of the testosterone is produced in the testicles.
got
The
it.
testicles are the male gonads, and that's
Yes.
also an endocrine organ. So the adrenal glands are communicating directly with the gonads.
Okay.
So if our adrenal glands are not functioning properly, then our gonads are not functioning properly, and the man is not able to produce as much testosterone. So this is what happens, for instance, during andropause. Our testosterone goes down. But if the male is stressed, then he's able to produce even less testosterone, and the adrenal gland is able to produce some testosterone in order to supplement the testosterone being produced or not being produced in the gonads.
So extreme stress, when the adrenals are fatigued, would that precipitate an earlier menopause and an earlier andropause? And by andropause, we're just saying male menopause. Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Testosterone going down.
Testosterone, right.
40.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would adrenal fatigue precipitate early menopause in women and early andropause in men?
Yeah, it could. I mean, absolutely. It could precipitate early menopause. Chronic stress can precipitate secondary amenorrhea, when your menses all of a sudden stop. Women can be 30, 35.
Okay.
Or it can make perimenopause a lot worse, or it definitely makes menopause a lot worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the adrenal glands, which are supposed to be producing supplemental hormones, aren't producing the supplemental hormones, so you're screwed.
Right. And women need some testosterone. They need that testosterone that the adrenal glands
Oh,
are
God, yeah.
creating as well.
Testosterone's delicious. I mean, women need testosterone because if you don't have it, you have no sex drive. You can't put on any muscle. You can't lose body fat. And what I know is the more because I've had my blood work done. I have my blood work done a lot because I have a thyroid issue, and they always check my hormones. Within the normal range of a female, I'm pretty much as high as you can go on the testosterone. Like, I'm not so high that I'm a dude. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm like in the normal range, I'm about as high as you can go for a female. Any higher, I'd be crisscrossing into dangerous territory, and you don't want that.
Right.
But I like it because it keeps. I think it makes my skin look nice. It allows me to put on muscle mass and to remain lean and such like that.
Yeah, and honestly, testosterone is not an end hormone. So testosterone converts into estrogen. And so the problem is that if we're not producing enough testosterone, and yet the testosterone that we have is converting itself into estrogen, then you get a very doughy effect. So, for instance, men who have a big belly or start losing hair, keep growing gynecomastia, start growing breast tissue, or lose their libido, it's not just a decline in testosterone, but it's a relative decline of estrogen, testosterone going down, estrogen increasing.
Right. I think I've told you this before because I've worked with a lot of people in the obese community for decades. And what I call it is and I've noticed this in all of my obese male patients, the feminization of the man. They start to look kind of like a feminine form. They develop breasts, gynecomastia is what it's called. They almost develop hips. I mean, they start to feminize. Yeah. Because of all the excess fat. And then the problem with that, and this isn't the topic of the show, the topic is really more stress, but then that excess fat on their bodies from being morbidly obese, that fat creates estrogen.
It does.
So I had a man once who was so obese, when we had him tested, he was on blood work more female than I am. Do you know what I mean? Like his levels were higher than mine, and he's genetically male.
Yeah. Yeah, so not only is stress, the impact of cortisol affecting our appetite, and I think we're going to talk about that, but then it's also causing a shift, a low production of DHEA so that we can't actually produce enough hormones, so that then we're also getting this effect on the other side. So we're getting like this excess estrogenization, which causes fat deposits, and then the effects of the fat deposits also creates further problems. Because
fat is an organ that generates its own estrogen.
It's a metabolic tissue, definitely. It's a storage tissue. It's a storage site, and it does generate. It is metabolically active. It does generate. It does generate estrogen and other hormones as well, and even the effect of losing weight quickly also as positive as it is, can also throw off our hormones.
If you
Because
lose
then
body fat too fast?
Yes, because then if you're losing body fat, then you're also releasing estrogen into the bloodstream.
Got it. Right, because when the body fat, the
Lipolysis.
lipolysis,
Mm-hmm.
when that happens, those are chemicals that are going somewhere.
Right.
Right. Now, so as regards stress, we have the general adaptation syndrome.
Right.
And actually, why don't we first talk about adrenal fatigue and insufficiency? We've already sort of touched on that. You have 6 questions that you ask patients to ask themselves. Now, again, adrenal fatigue and insufficiency, in Western medicine, they'd call it Addison's disease. We're talking about on a spectrum, subclinical, so you have patients ask themselves this: are you feeling tired and wired?
Yeah. Yeah, so we all know what that feeling is. That feels like you're on the go. You're ramped up, but you're very sensitive. And as soon as your engagement is over, you crash.
Right.
So your energy is very discombobulated. You have peak of energy and then it crash.
Or haven't you ever had a patient say to you, I'm exhausted and I'm lying here and I can't fall asleep? Has that ever happened to you, Chad? Like you're exhausted. And
Yes,
exhausted out of your mind, but you're lying in bed, and for the life of you, you cannot sleep.
Yep.
Yeah, your mind's going a mile a minute.
Okay.
or
Are you awakening unrefreshed? So if you've slept, let's say enough, and you still feel like you were hit by a Mack truck.
Yeah. So if you're waking up and you're feeling unrefreshed, even though you've had enough sleep, quote unquote enough sleep, then it means that you have adrenal insufficiency because your cortisol would be low.
Got it. Your cortisol would be low and it should be high. Number 3, do you get a second wind at 10 p.m. at night?
Right. So if you're feeling like you have you're tired during the day or your energy is precious during the day, let's say, or you need to caffeinate in order to get enough energy, etc. But then, and maybe you feel dead tired from the time you get off work, from 5 o'clock to 9, 10 o'clock, dead tired. And then as soon as 10 o'clock hits, alert, you can get all your emailing done, you can talk, you can do your bills, you can do all of your stuff.
Okay.
And then you end up not going to bed until 1 a.m.
Okay.
Very, very common. And so this is because cortisol is suppressed during the day, or it's either normal or suppressed during the day, and then at night it's still normal, and the body's recognizing it as an energy boost. Actually,
what's the magic 10 p.m.? What's the reason? Is that
that's the time when melatonin should increase, but it's not because cortisol is elevated.
Okay, so
really it's a 9, but you feel it at 10. People tend to feel it at 10.
10 or so. Okay.
Melatonin should start going up at 9. As the sun's going down, melatonin should increase, which means that cortisol is going down, because I said they have to be opposite. And then, but if cortisol is up, then melatonin's down.
Right. And what's
sleeping.
What's so bizarre is with the modern world, especially in New York, this isn't how it is like when I go visit my family in Florida. They're lights out in bed at 10 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. Often I'm just sauntering home from the gym 10:30 or so.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
You know,
it doesn't help to be in a city that never sleeps.
Right.
I mean, there's no reason.
Right.
We don't have to. There's
right.
light.
I mean,
there's
literally,
noise.
how often am I? I'm just like sauntering. I'm in the grocery store at 10:30 at night, picking up whatever I'm gonna have for dinner.
24 hours. It's convenient.
Yeah, we're doing it to ourselves. Number 4, do you crave sugar?
Yeah. So if you crave sugar throughout the day, it's almost like sugar's your drug, or you're self-medicating yourself with sugar. You know, you need your sugar fix. Whether or not you identify with this or not, I hope you do when we're saying this, but if you kind of need a sugar fix every hour, every 2 hours, this is because your natural energy, which would be stimulated from your cortisol, is not high enough or substantial enough during the day. Now, you might also not be eating properly, eating enough, vegetables
or enough protein, and your blood
Yes.
sugar may be all over the place.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
Usually my clients, when they crave sugar, it's because they're eating sugar and then they have a crash and then they crave it, then they eat it, then they have a crash and then they crave it, then they eat it, then they have a crash. And like I could do it like a graph.
Right.
But
that is an adrenal problem. At least it's the adrenal connection to the pancreas.
Got it.
Because if you're not able to stabilize your blood sugar, and you're doing it to yourself, you're creating the problem with your bad lifestyle. It's not like you're not doing it, but you're hurting your adrenal glands every time you do that.
By eating a ton of sugar.
And not eating your protein.
Got it. Number 5 is, do you crave salt? So many people crave salt.
So many people.
Chad, do you crave salt? Is that your
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, so that's your thing?
My salt fix comes through sunflower seeds.
More so than sugar, though? Like,
definitely. I'll go to salt before sugar.
Yeah, so that would be a stage 1. We haven't gotten into that yet, but that's an initial reaction because our body's losing salt and losing water. So we're craving the salt. It's kind of like when children know that they need green vegetables. They have that intuition. So that salt crave is kind of like that. It's a physiological mechanism that's going on. We need salt because we need to maintain.
The cravings are physiological. It's not his head. It's not him thinking about it, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, well, sugar sometimes is like that. You know, it's like we have a little bit of a love relationship with sugar, so we can, I just want it, you know.
Right.
But it might not be as physiological, whereas a salt craving is more of a physiological.
Well, if I may, because I also used to suffer from kidney stones, and the salt was all tied in, but now I drink gallons of water a day because of that exact reasoning.
Okay, well, that's the other thing. If the more water you drink, the more salt you actually do need.
Oh, okay.
Because
so that could be it also. I love water. I will drink all day.
Yeah, I do. Me too. So okay.
And then we also need to make, we need to be sure that we're drinking that we're consuming a multiplicity of minerals, because salt's not just sodium, right?
Well, I use pink Himalayan sea salt. That's what I use.
Right.
And I make myself. I have a half a teaspoon every day, whether I want it or not. I just for health reasons.
Right,
you know?
because it's filled with all these 89 trace minerals.
Well, I just do it. I just do it because I try, But number 6 is your sex drive low or absent? And that would be, adrenal fatigue.
Right. Goes back to, so if your body's focusing on creating cortisol, then it's not really putting any effort into creating DHEA or testosterone. It's too tired. Only has reserves for cortisol.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so sex drive low. Very quickly, why don't we talk about the general adaptation syndrome, which it's coping, a way of coping.
Right.
There are 3 stages. I want to talk about these 3 stages and then get into the 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. So is the coping precedes the general adaptation syndrome precedes adrenal fatigue, right? Because it's your body's way of trying to cope with what is.
Yeah. The general adaptation syndrome is your body's normal way of coping with stress.
Okay.
It's the normal physiological process. I mean, they've divided it into stages, but it's basically what happens when we are presented with stress.
Okay. And you say stage 1 is alarm. Alarm is the first stage, and it's divided into shock and anti-shock. What's that?
Right. So shock is actually when our blood pressure goes down. So our blood pressure you think, we normally only associate shock when somebody, gets hit over the head, or they see something frightening in front of them, or
they literally
gotten hypothermia or something, right? But shock is when our blood pressure goes down, our muscle mass goes down, and our overall energy, ability to raise energy goes down. So that's shock. Anti-shock is the reaction to that. So it's when the processes start coming back and normalizing again. So we have shock and anti-shock. So your blood pressure goes down, you get very weak, your muscles get lax, you
collapse.
Yeah, you faint. And then we have anti-shock.
When you faint, is that always shock? Because I fainted I fainted twice in my life.
No, it's not always shock. It's sometimes a circulatory neurological issue.
Because one of the days I fainted, I had really low blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, low blood pressure, low blood sugar also.
It was, yeah. Okay. Stage 2 is resistance.
Right. So the resistance stage is there's an increased secretion of the glucocorticoids, so of the cortisol, of the cortisone.
Okay.
And then because cortisol, as we know, is related to stimulating other hormones as well, so then it sends out messengers saying that, we need catabolism. We need to break down fat. We need to break down muscle for protein. We need to break down sugar and release it into the bloodstream. So we have to break down all of these stored nutrients, and so that they can go into the bloodstream, so that we have energy to restore ourselves.
And why is it called resistance? Because we're resisting why is it called resistance, I wonder? Resistance is the second stage. Alarm.
I would say it's the body fighting back. So it's the way the
Got
body
it.
fights back against having acute stress.
Because the body always wants to maintain homeostasis and protect you.
Right.
Your body's always going to try to protect you and
Yes.
keep you upright and standing.
Yeah, because if you're in shock, you have low blood pressure, you have low blood sugar, you need nutrients back into your bloodstream now in order so that you can, be normal again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the third stage of our general adaptation syndrome is either exhaustion or recovery. Exhaustion is the crash.
Exhaustion is the crash, and exhaustion, really what it is that you go back into the alarm stage. If your body's so weak that it can't recover normally, if you don't go into recovery, then you go back into the alarm stage, and ultimately this can lead to death because your blood pressure goes down again, and then your body, every time it goes back into the alarm stage, then your body's less likely to be able to cope with the reaction. Whereas recovery is when your body might have a chronic illness by that time if it happens enough.
Okay.
But it's going back into it depends on how often it happens. But recovery, we only get to the third stage if the first two stages have broken down, and we can't normalize the nutrition in our blood.
And most of us probably go into recovery, but recovery could be leading you into a chronic disease.
That's right.
Okay.
Because your body the body saved your life, but then there might be chronic disease.
Chronic
now.
disease like chronic fatigue syndrome,
Right.
fibromyalgia, blah,
Right.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay, so recovery is kind of a misnomer because it could
It
actually
is.
be leading into chronic disease.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. The 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. It's on page 6 of the note. Yeah, page 6, Mama. Okay, so the 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. And what happens if it's left untreated. So stage 1 is, you say, a prolonged increased excitatory stimulus to the adrenals, resulting in a prolonged increased cortisol output.
Right.
So in other words, the stage 1 is the adrenals have been pumping cortisol. You haven't been experiencing acute stress. It's just been like unrelenting stress, and your adrenals are just worn out from pumping cortisol.
Your adrenals are getting worn out because you're in that state of tired and wired. You're in that state of frenzy, of being frenetic. So you're very sensitive. So patients who come in at this stage, they are having a hard time kind of coping with stress. They know that if anybody yells at them, they're more sensitive. They're really sensitive to caffeine and sugar, although they definitely likely crave salt. So they're feeling like they're on edge. They feel on edge. Yeah, it's like that.
Okay.
You know, that person who's just you say one thing and they melt down or they blow up at you. Or,
Right, I've been
Yeah.
there. I mean, like
Yeah.
I've been there when my mom was dying. She she took a really long time to die, and we were all trying to pitch in to care for her and stuff. And you just I remember one day I took a break. I took like 20 minutes. I wanted to go to the health food store and get a rotisserie chicken, blah, 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 blah. And I was in line trying to check out, and somebody said something to me, and I screamed at this, I mean, it's just like, you're so,
You're on edge.
it's not good.
You're
it's
on
not
edge.
good.
It's a really bad feeling.
And you feel so out of control.
Yeah.
Right, so stage 2 of adrenal fatigue.
So stage 2 is a transition phase. Generally, so with stage 1, there's if I look at blood work or at saliva, then usually there's a high cortisol peak in the morning. And throughout the day, it generally looks the same, although the afternoon peak might not happen. So there might be overall, the cortisol levels are the same for the day, but there's like a higher peak in the morning, and then throughout the day, it's less energy. So the person might wake up out of bed really quickly,
Okay.
but then throughout the day, their energy's kind of dull, and they just don't have stamina for
Is this the
things.
person who says by 3, 4 o'clock,
Wiped
I'm
out.
just I'm at the office, just and I have to go to get something to eat.
Yeah.
I need a sugar snack at 4 o'clock because I'm just a mess.
By that time, then that's getting into more the transitional phase, stage 2. So stage 2, when they wake up tired. They don't have a cortisol spike, but their cortisol is probably also normal or maybe a little bit low, but they're having a second wind at night. So they don't have the cortisol spike in the morning, but overall their cortisol is a little flat. They don't have energy. They kind of need adrenaline producing activities. Like they might be actually at a state where they over exercise, or they really love going to the gym, or they love, something that's danger, or they really need a lot of caffeine, or they're taking a lot of stimulants, sugar, chocolate.
Is this the person who cannot start his or her day until they have 2 cups of coffee and do not talk to them until they do?
Yes.
Is that?
Yes, this is that person. They're at second stage adrenal fatigue.
Oh God. Okay.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I'm not like that, thank God, but I know people who are do not cross them before they've
Right. and they think that everything is normal, but they're a little bit maybe tense.
Yeah.
But overall their energy is low. They need to kind of self-medicate with energy.
Low libido, depression.
Yeah, their DHEA is starting to go down, so the DHEA is like normal or low if we measure it. So they're probably not really producing quite enough testosterone, quite enough progesterone. And then they get a second wind at night. Got it.
Yeah. And stage 3, adrenal fatigue. You call this, the terminal stage.
So it's the terminal stage of adrenal fatigue. Yeah. It's not death, but this is like low cortisol, so it's flatlined. There's a decreased cortisol at night as well. There's an HPA crash. So there's a inequality between the communication that's going on in the brain and the adrenal glands. So the brain is also not picking up proper hormone signals from the adrenals, and it will impact other hormones. So at this stage of adrenal fatigue, then there's likely other organ systems involved. So it could be the thyroid, or it could be energy production, mitochondria.
All right, so stage 3, the adrenal glands cannot produce enough cortisol.
Right.
All the cortisol level, it's always below normal.
Yeah, and cortisol is generally low. I mean, we're not talking about Addison, so we're not talking adrenal glands.
This
is not Addison's. Yet. No, it's still, it's just extreme exhaustion. Maybe we call it chronic fatigue. Maybe
I've had that.
People feel fibromyalgia-like symptoms. They have increased pain. But there's no stimulants that helps them at all. They could drink like multiple cups of coffee. It does not keep them awake. They could sleep all the time.
So if someone has chronic fatigue syndrome, they're probably in stage 3 adrenal.
Yeah.
Adrenal. Okay. And you said, tired no matter what, depression, stimulants don't work, continued salt cravings, too tired to exercise, no interest in sex.
Right. Yeah.
Can I tell you something? That sounds like a lot of new moms who are exhausted from taking care of a baby with colic. And I mean, would that be?
Well, I mean, so new moms, are getting they're not getting enough sleep.
Okay.
So being a very stressed out mom could create this kind of situation. I mean, I do believe that being a new mom has a stressful effect. Obviously, it's stressful and it has an effect on the adrenal glands. However, being a new mom, if she's not depressed, I mean, if she doesn't have postpartum depression, then she's also enjoying bonding and she's got some hormone elevation. So there is some counter activity, right? There's lots of love going on. There's lots of oxytocin. So her adrenals are being supported in some ways from that, but they're underslept. I mean, usually new moms, it's just lack of sleep. But it looks kind of similar. It's like very exhausted.
They're just exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the baby with the colic. You got a 2-year-old strapped to your leg. Your nipples are all crusty from, I mean, seriously. Yeah. No, seriously. Let's talk about the reality of motherhood.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the moms who have a 2-year-old strapped to one leg, a newborn, who wants to nurse every 90 minutes because it's a 10-pounder. The kid wants to nurse every 90 minutes around the clock. You've got an infected nipple. You're not sleeping.
Yeah. No, it's a lot.
Seriously.
You need 50% more calories when you're nursing than you did when you were pregnant.
Right.
So being nursing in itself is so energy demanding, not to do with the adrenal glands, per se, but just in
I'm
terms
just
of
about the lack of sleep.
Yeah, in terms of nutrition that's needed and energy
sleep
and lack of sleep. Yeah.
I don't know how these moms do it. I really don't. Now, what happens if adrenal fatigue is left untreated? So if people don't go, okay, I better do something. I better check myself here because this is not working. Then do we go into Addison's disease?
So we can. So then it depends on what your genetics is. So whether you're prone to Addison's disease, right? Not everybody, people will reach like a dam, right? Where the water's backed up. So your body's not producing cortisol anymore, but something's got to give. And so in some people, their adrenal glands will burn out, medically burn out. But in other people, they'll get thyroid disease. In other people, they'll get immune deficiency, autoimmune disease, or they'll get inability to digest any food.
Okay, just a second. So you said, if adrenal fatigue is left untreated, you can get, and you don't go into Addison's disease.
Right, which most people don't.
Okay. I've not seen it. I've never had a client with
No.
Addison's disease ever.
No, usually the adrenal glands do not absolutely cack out.
Crash. Okay.
Usually there's an impact on other organ systems in the
Okay.
endocrine system in the body that start to break down.
So again, you might see thyroid disease.
Right.
You might see other autoimmune diseases.
Right.
Autoimmune meaning when the body turns on itself.
Right.
Name a couple autoimmune
Yeah,
diseases.
rheumatoid arthritis,
Right.
lupus, MS.
Oh, multiple sclerosis is autoimmune. I did not know
Autoimmune.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Multiple sclerosis, things like that. Okay.
Hashimoto's thyroiditis is
I have
autoimmune
Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You want to know something interesting? Because I suffered with severe chronic fatigue. What am I, 52? This was probably 20 years ago, 20, maybe more like in my mid-30s, right around the time I was getting out of grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And
Stress, right?
well, grad school's like, but the point is, I at that time, preceding that, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroid, which is an autoimmune dysfunction of the thyroid. So the thyroid dysfunction preceded me crashing into chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah. Now with autoimmune disease, it's usually multifactorial, so there's not usually one cause,
Right.
but definitely stress exacerbates. And so if a person's been stressed to the point where their adrenal glands are not even producing enough cortisol anymore, their body's not able to heal itself properly.
Mhm.
So whatever the predisposition for the person is, we all have we inherit our own predisposition, right?
Mhm.
Not everybody's going to get diabetes. They can live with metabolic syndrome for 50 years and never get diabetes.
Right.
They might get heart disease instead.
Right.
So whatever the predisposition
I
is.
got the thyroid dysfunction, but I also have
Right.
had the chronic fatigue. And the way I got over the chronic fatigue was I went to a holistic physician, and she basically said to me, look, I was in my, I was like 35, 36. I had already been diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroid because that was at 33. And she basically looked at me and she said, Tara, you can do this the easy way or you can do this the hard way. If you want to make this easy, you need to stop living the life that you are for a temporary period of time. And you need to spend a lot of time in bed sleeping.
Mhm.
You need to give your body wants sleep. I was just going and going and going. I mean, I was on the New York City roller coaster of life.
Right.
And so
you're at terminal stage adrenal insufficiency.
I did what I was told, and thank God, I was able to pull myself out of it. But I thought for a while there, this is going to take me out. Like, this is going to take me out. And it was really scary. And thank God. I mean, now I'm so grateful. I just turned 52 last week. I feel better than
Happy birthday.
Thank you, but I feel better than I ever have. But that was a lesson I had to learn, because I created that for myself.
And it's a really good point because it's only ourselves and noticing and paying attention to our own symptom and making a change in our lifestyle that we're going to be able to get back to where we were. There's no pill that helps fix your adrenal glands.
No one offered me pills. She just basically put it back on me. She basically said, here's the dealio, Tara. You can do this in the easy way or you can do this the hard way. You're not going to like the hard way because it'll take you out. And so, often when it's not until you're pushed against a wall in life that you realize, if I don't change, I'm not going to be around to live the life I want. So
the effects of stress are very real.
Now let's quickly talk. Let me see. Okay. Let's talk about some suggestions that you have as a physician to offer patients. Okay. So let's say people listening are in some stage of adrenal fatigue.
Yeah. So you really want to look at your overall 24-hour. I mean, that you really have to look at yourself 24-hour. I do always encourage people to journal, what are you eating? How are you spending your time? How many hours are you sleeping? Especially because if we compartmentalize, if we're so separate from ourselves, we're not really aware of what's triggering us to eat, what times of the day we're eating. Oh, I forgot what I ate. So many people are so stressed out. It's an afterthought. And so you really need to put yourself on a schedule. And this is very, very important. Green vegetables and root vegetables are the a very simple introduction that people can do to help their bodies get the minerals and the salt that we were talking about that nourish the adrenal glands.
What do you think about pink Himalayan sea salt? Because that's the only salt I'll put in my body. Is that cool?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I recommend pink Himalayan sea salt. I do also recommend sea salt, because Himalayan salt actually is not from the sea. It's actually from the mine, and the one mineral that it's missing is iodine.
Okay.
And so iodine is extremely important to nourish the thyroid gland, and it is also important.
So which
for
salt
the
do you
adrenals.
recommend?
So I recommend the Grelin Celtic sea salt.
Grelin?
Yeah.
G-R?
Grelin.
Oh,
Celtic.
Grelin.
Yeah.
Celtic.
Sea salt.
Where can we get that? Health food store?
Yeah, yeah. You can order it, health food store.
Is
Whole
Grelin a
Foods.
brand? Is Grelin
It's
a brand? Okay,
yeah.
so Grelin, Grelin Celtic salt, sea salt.
Sea salt, yeah. Now, there's sea salts from every ocean in the world. You know, there's
Okay.
Mediterranean sea salt, there's fleur de sel from France. There's all sorts of different salts. But having salt from the sea does give you a small amount of iodine. Now, food manufacturers are not allowed to say that it's iodized because it has not been formulated with iodine added like
Okay.
table salt has, right? Those have been fortified with iodine. So there's a whole lot of complications in terms of knowing how much iodine you're getting in salt. But the only sources, the best sources of iodine in the diet are seaweed, anything that's from the sea. Seaweed, like nori, if you
Kelp.
eat sushi, kelp, arame, wakame, dulse. These are all the seaweeds that we can eat that also help to give us a full array of minerals to help to nourish our adrenal
And that's
glands.
what you and
Very
you say
important.
greens, root
Leafy
vegetables.
green vegetables, anything that's grown in the ground. That's where the food absorbs the minerals from the soil. Now, the better the soil, the better the vegetable.
So you obviously advocate for organic and non-GMO.
Yes, I do.
And proteins, enough protein.
Yes, enough protein in the diet. The protein gives the body the amino acids that it needs in order to regulate the blood sugar. I mean, nutrition is so important.
Right.
That's one of the best ways that we can heal our adrenal glands is with the food. Because
Good
if we're
nutrition.
constantly self-medicating with sugar, then we're only ever offering ourselves a quick fix to keep us
Right.
going, but we're never actually getting deep down to the root of the problem and
Right.
giving the adrenal glands and our stress the nutrients that
Right.
it needs.
I know people. I know New York, where it's filled with a bunch of skinny little models. I know people who live on sugar, caffeine, and cigarettes.
Oh yeah, espresso.
I mean,
chocolate covered espresso beans. I mean,
Yeah, they live on caffeine and cigarettes, and so.
but they're gonna age. They're not gonna age gracefully. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
problems. You look like a beautiful young 20 or 25-year-old, but 10,
Yeah.
20 years later it
Yeah.
catches up.
Come talk to me
and
when
at
you're
52, they don't
yeah.
look like you.
When you're
you
52
know?
and you get your AARP card in the mail.
So-
Chad, I got my AARP card in the. No, AARP wanted me to join.
Yeah.
What's
of course.
AARP?
The second you turn over 50.
Oh my gosh,
Hi,
that
Vay.
must be. That's a stress.
Oh, it's delightful. Okay, so yeah, on my birthday, I got a bunch of cards because it was Monday, July 3rd. I got a bunch of cards, and AARP sent me an application. All right, so number 2, we got to hurry here. Healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
All the things we talked about before.
Yeah, a walk in nature, a meditation, a nap, play with your pet. You know, you have to do
Laugh with
yes,
your girlfriend.
laughter.
Yeah.
You have to do things every day. You don't wait
Till the
until the
weekend.
weekend to enjoy yourself. You need to relax every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Pet yourself. You know, like anything. It's really
Talk to a friend.
Yeah.
Talk to a girlfriend.
Release.
Talk. Yeah.
go out on your lunch. Take a lunch break. New Yorkers don't even take lunch breaks. Take a lunch break. Go outside.
Now you say adaptogens like rhodiola, ashwagandha, licorice root,
yeah.
Siberian ginseng.
I do recommend stress relief supplements. They're really effective and they help to speed up the process of healing the adrenal
Do you
glands.
write about that? Because that's something people are going to want more. Do you write about that on your website, in your blog?
Yes, I
If
do. Yeah, we talk about adaptogens.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I'll give out your website. So
Yeah.
because I want people to be able to read. So on your blog attached to your website.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, go to bed on time.
On time, 10 p.m. people.
You don't go to bed at 10 p.m., do you?
I go to bed at 10:30. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What about those of us that don't? Because I just don't. I don't want to. If I went to bed at 10:30, I would miss most of my life. so much good, a lot of good stuff happens after 10:30. Chad, are you with me?
No. My bubby said nothing good happens after 10:30.
Your bubby, I don't care. Your bubby.
My grandmother.
Well, bubby, I don't agree. But like, to me.
Well, sex does happen at 3 p.m.
Yeah,
also.
but like,
Don't tell my mother.
seriously, like, what about, because this is where I'm the worst about, I go to bed late.
So this is my recommendation, because if you go to sleep on time, I mean, we say the hours before midnight count as double.
Correct.
And we cannot trick our systems into getting better rested. It's only if we go to bed early, we're asleep by midnight, that we get into REM sleep by 2 a.m.
Okay.
If you're trying to delay that, your body's just not going to go into as deep a sleep, as satisfying sleep as it would if you went to bed earlier.
Okay.
So, but, everybody has to fit their own lifestyle and their own personality into these recommendations. So if you can do 4 out of 5, then at least you're, it's not to be perfect. That's not the point, to do everything perfectly in your life. The point is to balance it all out so that you're doing the best possible.
Okay.
If you do enough of the good things, and then even if you're, a little sleep deprived, you go to bed too late, then hopefully it averages out so that you don't get cancer. I mean, honestly, I really do mean that.
I don't but see, what if you go to bed late and sleep late? Like, what if your body just tends to operate on a later cycle?
I do think we talk ourselves into that. That's something that I mean, some children, it's true, are afraid to go to sleep, or they're stressed in their house. So people grow up always having gone to bed late. And it might be our night hawk. People call themselves a night owl.
I'm a night owl.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So there is that, but it's still never healthy.
I'm not espousing it. I'm just, I can't lie. I mean, I hate people who act like they do everything perfectly, because I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I do eat very well. I mean, the eating and all these other things I have down, but I got to be honest, I'm not good about going to bed early.
And for instance, if you cannot go to bed between 9 and 11, then it usually does mean that the stress hormones are high.
Okay.
So it's not that, it's just my preference. It usually is that you can't actually calm down. You couldn't go to bed between 9 and 11. And so this means that you have you have second stage adrenal burnout.
Yeah.
And if you've already had third stage adrenal burnout, that if you're at second, then that's actually good, because you're moving in the opposite direction, right? Your adrenal glands are getting healthy.
Yeah.
Can you get yourself to a point where you're actually tired at 10 p.m.? So, we each can set our own goals, and to try to do something. So as I mentioned, if you're not doing any of these things, then try to do one, right? We always have to work at where we are.
We just have one more sec here. Okay. You say support other organs of the system.
Yeah.
Think about your thyroid, your digestion, your nervous system, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And so even if we can't do everything perfectly, we're not taking adaptogens. If you're making sure that you're getting all of your, you're taking your multivitamin, if you're making sure that you're, have a good sex relationship, that you are taking your iodine, your magnesium, your minerals that you need for your thyroid to function well, your iron, then you're also helping to support your adrenal glands indirectly.
Okay. Now, I think this was a fantastic show. I would like to let me give out your information. I would like to thank, I'd like to thank my wonderful guest, Dr. Millie Lytle. For information about Dr. Millie, and you can check out her blog, yeah?
Yeah.
And the services that she offers, go to her website. It's Eating for Meaning. eatingformeaning.com. Dr. Millie is also offering my listeners the chance to tune into the Happy Hour Hypnosis.
Yep.
It's a weekly relaxation program that she does every Sunday night from 7:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you said it's free, but people have to pre-register at your site, Eating for Meaning. Is there a little note thing there where they can see where they can?
Yeah, go to events and it pops up.
Okay, so again, Eating for Meaning. Now, Chad, I'm going to do a quick Tamari's tip, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Chad, what's with his voice?
Yeah, I want that tip.
Okay, this is a good tip.
Sorry.
You'll like this. Now, we're going to switch to the Tamari's tip segment of the week. Not Tamari's tit, but Tamari's tip. Not to be confused. The Tamari's tip segment, I've decided to call Effectively Coping with Stress, like I have any business telling people how to effectively cope with stress, but there's a reason that I picked this as my segment. At the top of the show, I said, and I'm being honest, I don't naturally deal well with stress, and I've had to actually train myself to be very aware of my thoughts, which can either make a situation extremely stressful or help me keep a balanced perspective on what's happening. And again, I found for me that it's not what's actually happening, but more so how I think about it and how I interpret it that creates stress or not. So that's where I've had to catch myself. And when I was younger, I always used to think like this. I think you guys will understand this. I always used to think, oh, life is going to get easier once I get past this hurdle, or once I get past that hurdle, once I get into grad school, or once I get out of grad school. But there's always the next hurdle. Whenever I jump over a hurdle, the next one always shows up. So as I've gotten older, life is just more busy. Life is just more complicated, and I have more responsibility, and I tend to have more on my plate, not less. So I figured out that stress just isn't, it's not going away. So I decided that I would either need to deal with life as it is, very stressful, very busy, or just get in bed and pull the covers over my head. Now, the only way that I've found to survive everything without going nuts is just to really embrace it, to sort of embrace the insanity and accept that life is filled with daily challenges. It's filled with obstacles, endless deadlines, and a lot of things that I don't want to deal with, but I know I have to. So I wanted to tell you guys some things that have helped me shift my thinking and shift my ability to deal with stress. One thing that's helped me tremendously is observing people who do handle stress well and watching how they respond to what I would perceive as a stressful event. And then I try to emulate them and adopt their attitudes about life and how they just let things roll off their back. An example is my sister-in-law. I have two brothers, and they're both married to beautiful girls. My baby brother, Stephen, is married to a beautiful girl named Joanna. She's the most chill person. She's so chill. I admire her because nothing rattles her, whereas I'm the opposite. Every little thing rattles me. I'm very tightly wound. So by observing people who I admire and seeing how they deal with life, I try to emulate them and think, I can do that. I can learn to think the way they think. And again, I believe that often the way we respond to events is learned to an extent. And I picked up a lot of my patterns from my mom, who also tended to freak out easily. So I've had to consciously unlearn patterns that I've identified as not helping me and then teach myself these new patterns of thinking. So if you struggle with stress and you let things get to you, one of the things that may be helpful is to catch yourself in the midst of getting stressed out and observe what you're telling yourself in that moment that may be making the situation worse than it really is. And really try to be in the situation and remain objective about what's happening rather than get all emotionally attached to it and then freak out. Something else that's also helped me overall is getting enough sleep. Again, we've already said I don't sleep the best hours because ideally I'd be in bed at 10:30, which I don't. I tend to be a late night person. I get very creative late at night. And I enjoy that creativity. I do some of my best creative work late at night when everybody else is asleep. On days when I don't have to set an alarm clock, I let my body just sleep as long as it needs to. And I know a lot of you can't do that. You've got children. I don't have children that are screaming and jumping in bed on me, so I can do that. But I just don't set an alarm clock. If I let my body sleep however long it wants. And when I'm sleep deprived, I know that I have a very short fuse and I react poorly to things. So everything gets blown out of proportion and I'm more prone to get stressed out. So that's what I found. Also, exercise has helped me manage and regulate how I manage stress because for me, it provides an immediate physical release of pent-up energy. And I know for me, when I have like a lot of anxiety to the extent that I want to just crawl out of my skin, if I go running, like if I go outside to the park and go running down by the Hudson River for 10 or 15 minutes, really hard and fast, especially if it's outside, it helps. It really calms me down. Also, intense weight training helps to keep me balanced and helps me feel strong in my life. And so I can be more positive about things. Finally, eating a clean diet really helps me manage my stress, believe it or not. If I stick to healthy proteins, a lot of healthy fat, I eat a lot of healthy fat, lots of vegetables, and I keep my blood sugar steady, I find that I'm better able to manage my emotions, and therefore I'm better able to manage my stress response or how I respond to situations in my life. When I used to eat really poorly. When I was eating poorly and basically living on diet soda and processed trash, my blood sugar was up and down and all over the place. And as a result, my moods were up and down and all over the place. And this left me very susceptible to getting stressed out very easily, just like when we discussed with Dr. Millie. So for me, clean eating, getting enough sleep, consistently exercising, and really being aware of how I'm reacting in the moment, and then making adjustments and keeping things in perspective are things that have helped me learn to cope with life more effectively. And one more thing that I believe is true, and I think most people will agree with this, is you can train yourself to deal with more and more stress by being exposed to more and more and figuring out how to deal with everything. And by this, I mean things that I deal with now in my life. 10 years ago, it would have taken me out. I mean, it would have floored me. I could not have dealt with everything on my plate now 10 years ago. But as I've gotten older and I've had to deal with more, little by little, I've actually learned to cope with more. So that's food for thought. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. That's all. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll join me next week. Please rate and review Tara Marie Live on iTunes, and be sure to subscribe to Tara Marie Live so you never miss an episode. You can subscribe on my website, taramarie.com. That's TARAMARIE.com. While you're there on taramarie.com, you can also listen to and download all episodes. They're all posted there if you've missed any shows. While you're on my website, taramarie.com, sign up for my mailing list. There's a pop-up in the right corner that says Join Tara Marie's mailing list. Every single week, I write a newsletter, and I include information about that week's guest and the episode, and I put a direct link to the episode right there in the newsletter. And you'll also be signed up to get my Tara Marie's tips about everything I talk about: fitness, nutrition, motivation, and getting on the path to health. Please connect with me on social media. On Facebook, I'm at Tara Marie Live. And on Twitter, I'm at TaraMarie_live. I hope that you have a great week filled with health and happiness. Make better choices today than you did yesterday, and you'll always be on the right path. God bless you, and peace out.